So now that you know what you're preparing for, do you know who you're preparing for? Have you thought about that? I'm not talking about aliens, I'm not talking about zombies, I'm talking about friends, neighbors, and family. You may be saying family, and why the others? Well, let's talk about that on the other side of the intro. Hey everybody, welcome back to Cascadia Dispatch. I'm Casey, and today we're going to talk about who you want to be thinking about when you're preparing for some sort of a disaster or an emergency or something like that. In our last video, we talked about what you would be preparing for. So we get an idea of, are you talking about a natural disaster? Are you talking about an economic issue? Some sort of a medical concern? So we kind of started to get an idea of what we would be preparing for, when that might happen, some of those ideas. Is it seasonal? Is it a random act of nature? But now it's time to figure out, who are we going to prepare for? And I'm not talking about aliens, I'm not talking about zombies, I'm not talking about, necessarily, a person that's going to come and create the problem. I'm talking about, as you're thinking about your plan, who are you thinking about in your plan? Who are you preparing for to make sure you have enough supplies for? Who are you thinking about when you talk about a team of people to make it through whatever the emergency is? So that's what we're going to focus on in this episode. We'll kind of walk through a couple of different scenarios and then we'll wrap it up. So let's get on with it. Okay, so when we think about the who, we're going to break this up into a couple of different kind of scenarios. One is your kind of at-home base location. One is going to be your community, and then one is going to be traveling. And you'll understand why I've broken this up here when we get into it here in a second. Okay, so home base. This is going to be the people that live in your home with you. Most likely it's going to be your family and maybe your pets. If you have pets, don't forget about your pets if you have pets. A lot of people forget to plan for pets, and then there's a disaster and you have issues with animals and things. So always plan for your pets. Make sure you have some way of keeping them contained and fed and watered. Same thing with your family. So you may not need to contain your family. I don't know, your family might need to be contained, who knows. But we make sure that we've got enough food and water for our family of 4 plus our cat. And then all of the other supplies that we would need to plan around that number of people for whatever amount of time we're planning for, be it 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year. That's kind of the base number that we go off of. Okay, so let's talk about community. So community means different things to different people, and in this scenario there are some slight gray areas here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then you kind of decide what applies to you. So the first area is family, extended family. Some people don't have extended family that live nearby, so you don't need to worry about this. For us, we have family members that live close by, and so we have built into our plan and our supplies enough food and water and supplies, shelters and things like that, so that they can come from their homes to our house, and our house can be kind of the base camp for everyone in our family. So we have accommodated for that. Some people, if you don't have family live close by, you don't need to worry about that. Friends are kind of another circle out. So some people might want to prepare for their home base to be the home base for all of their friends. For us, we have a lot of friends that live close by. We probably couldn't support all of those friends if they came to our house, so we have opted to educate them on how best to be prepared. We've gone on camping trips together, we've gone, I've shown them the gear that I've got, they've shown me the gear that they've got. We've talked about plans. As I've come across new strategies, I fill them in. And then also just making sure that they have the minimums, that they have water, that they have food, so that, if they need to be based out of their homes, that they have enough, and we know that they're going to be safe. You can't prepare to help everyone, but you can at least educate everyone to prepare themselves. Next up is neighbors. And this is the tricky one because, you may not like your neighbors may not like you, who knows? In our case, we like all of our neighbors. Your case may be different, but in the middle of a disaster, the neighbors are the people that you're going to see every day, suffering along with you through whatever the disaster is. And if they're not prepared, they're also the ones that are going to be coming and knocking on your door because they see that you have supplies. And when they don't have food and they don't have water and you do, it becomes a really difficult conversation to have of, sorry, we don't have enough for you, when you have stores for 3 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is, and you have to turn people away. So the best way to avoid that is to make sure that your neighbors are prepared too. We've done this by talking to most of our neighbors, especially the ones that are right around our house, our next door neighbors across the street, and making sure that they're aware of what the potential dangers are, making sure that they have some amount of water, some amount of food, some amount of supplies in case something were to happen. Our neighbors, we have a few people in our neighborhood that also take emergency preparedness very seriously. So we've actually started to kind of put some neighborhood groups together of, if an emergency happens, who has communications equipment and who has medical expertise and who has military training, so that we have an idea of, if a disaster were to happen, how could our neighborhood survive and exceed expectations of making it through whatever the disaster is, as opposed to just kind of being a group of suffering people who are waiting for help that may or may not show up. So educating your neighbors, educating your friends, educating your family, preparing for your family, all of those are really great. I think the best options that you have for your community. Okay, so the last thing is to think about when you're out and about, when you're not at home, you're not worried about your neighbors or your friends because you're not at your house. You want to make sure that you're prepared for the people that you travel with. So most of the time that's going to be your immediate family probably, because you're going out for the day or you're going on a vacation or something like that. But it could also be, for example, carpools to school. If something happens while you're driving your carpool and you have other people's children, what do you do in that case? Do you have enough supplies to not only take care of you and your kids, but also the kids that are in your care? Or if you carpool to work, do you have enough supplies for the people that would be in your carpool? So the easiest way to kind of think about this is, if you have 5 seats in your car, make sure you have some bare minimum supplies that could sustain 5 people for some amount of time. If you have 7 seats in your car, make sure you have enough for 7. You're likely not going to have 8 because you don't have enough seatbelts, and that's illegal. But, make sure that you have enough supplies for the number of people who could be in your car. If you have supplies for 7 and you only have 3 people in your car, well, great, you have extra supplies and you're going to be even better off. But if you have 7 people in your car and you only have supplies for 3, now you have, Hunger Games on the freeway with people that you know, and it's an awkward situation to be in, which I would not recommend, especially when you can plan ahead. So I would say that the most important thing, make sure you have enough supplies for everyone who could be in your car, and then you'll either have extra or you'll have just enough. But don't plan to have fewer, because that's just not a great thing. Okay, so that is gonna wrap it up for this video, talking about who to prepare for. This is really about numbers. It's not necessarily, like I said, it's not about zombies invading and preparing for them, or aliens coming and making sure we have enough tinfoil hats for everyone. This is really about how many people are you preparing to support through your emergency plans, and thinking about who's gonna be at your home base, who's going to be in your community that you need to support somehow, and then what is your plan for when you're out and about. That should take care of most of the scenarios and give you an idea when you're thinking then about what are you preparing for. Now you know how many people to prepare for, and then as we go through the series thinking about how that relates to every area of preparedness, you start to get an idea of the scale and scope of what you want to be thinking about, and how you want to be planning. What plans are relevant to you? Do you have a carpool? Maybe you don't. If you don't, then you don't need to worry about it. Do you live close to family? If you do, you will probably want to take that into account. If you don't live close to family, then you may not need to account for them at all. What you don't want to do though is plan for 2 people and realize really quickly in a disaster that you needed to plan for 6. Or to plan for 6 and realize that you needed to plan for 22. You really want to have an idea of what that is, and then get an idea of what that base level support is going to look like for that many people, how you're going to come together as a team. So that's today's video, talking about who you want to prepare for, getting those priorities in place so that you've got enough supplies for everybody. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. In the comments below, let us know how many people you're preparing for. What's the smallest group that we've got looking at, and what's the biggest group? Let's see if we can kind of figure that out. It'd be kind of fun. Again, like, subscribe, share, give it a thumbs up. We passed the 100 subscriber mark last week, so that was kind of exciting. We got our own URL, Cascadia Dispatch, on YouTube, so that was exciting. So I appreciate all the subscribers so far. We want to keep pushing to higher and higher, so tell your friends, share with your family, and we'll see you next week. That's going to do it. Thanks a lot.